Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
I'm Jessica Faust.
And today we have with us Amanda Jain for her first time on the YouTube channel. If you've been following along with the BookEnds YouTube, you know that we brought on an agent at a time to have a nice long conversation with them. And Amanda is up next. We've got a bunch of questions planned out for her, starting with her beginning in publishing and production, all the way to agenting and all of the cooking that she teases us with on Slack.
But also provides you recipes with. So.
That's true. She very graciously typed up a family recipe for me the other day. She was like, don't go by the measurements. You have to just wing it. It's the only way. So yeah, let's get started then. Amanda, you started your career in production, right?
I did. When I was applying for jobs, I was told if you want to work in publishing, apply for any job, any entry-level job. It's really hard to get your foot in the door. I, like everybody else, wanted to be an editor, but the production department needed someone, so I got hired. I knew nothing about book production going in.
Nobody does.
Bookstore. No, I just went to the bookstore and bought books. Luckily, I started out, basic stuff, just doing reprints, ordering paper, thousands of pounds of paper.
I think you have to, because I don't think most reviewers have any clue what production means or does. And to be honest, I don't even think published authors
probably not
sometimes do. So why don't you talk a little bit general about what it means to be in production?
So basically, our process would start once all of your edits are done. So you've gone back and forth with your editor. The manuscript is the way that the two of you want it, and now the book comes in-house for production. And so as a production manager, it was my job to schedule that process, basically come up with dates for everything that we needed, and then yell at everybody when they missed the dates. And that's basically how we described our job, because that's what we did.
Well, and this is the secret of why when people complain, why does it take so long to get a book? It's because all of those dates and the scheduling is everything that goes into play the minute you sign the contract, really.
And they're all theoretical dates. We start with, the sales department has come up with a pub date. And so we work backwards from that. So if you're publishing on April 4th, when do we need to have books in the warehouse to start the distribution end of things? And so we work back from that, knowing that each part of the process takes roughly this amount of time. I would come up with a schedule, order paper if we needed paper, contract the interior designer. So I was in charge of the interior design of the book, whereas the art director would take care of the outside. And that was probably the most fun that I had in the production end, was working with the interior designers and seeing what they would come up with for these books.
Yeah, it seems so simple, and I think something readers don't even notice, but it is, everything from the font to the spacing to the curly cues at the top of the page.
And my authors can probably attest now to, I was a production manager, but also for 10 years, I did composition for books. I designed a few books myself, and that doesn't go away. So when I'm editing their manuscripts, I see those accidental double spaces that probably nobody else cares about.
Right.
But I'm the nitpicky agent that's correcting the two spaces after the period, or, between the and car, they accidentally hit the space bar twice, because it just never goes away now. I can't let it be.
You brought up paper twice, so I feel like there was a mistake there. You ordered way too much paper once.
No, you could never order too much. That was the thing. But it was also, that was my first, looking back on it now, being like 22 years old and ordering literally hundreds of thousands of pounds of paper, and then having to initial those invoices saying, yes, this amount of money is okay. And you're like, sure, it's not my money. And, but also, what am I missing? I'm going to screw this up and we're going to have to pay all this money. And paper was really stressful. And then there would be paper shortages and you couldn't get paper, and like a lot of my life revolved around.
Well, that's what's happening right now.
Is the same thing that's happening right now.
Production managers everywhere, we feel you.
Yeah. Oh, you have no idea. But it helps too, I think, you know, now as an agent, when those, you know, if those random things go wrong, you know, I may not be able to fix it for an author, but I can at least explain what's going on. You know, I've been on the phone with a press that has my books done, but the area is flooded and they can't get trucks in, pick up the books. So again, I can't do anything as an agent when those random, or like a Target truck catches fire, and you know, at least I can explain that process to them. And I can also say that, you know, yes, the dates that they're giving you to return proofs are important, and yes, you do need to meet those dates for returning your edits and returning your first pass proofs and all of that, because I was generally the person jumping on the other end when it wasn't happening.
And it's
well, and that is something that's important when we talk and plan for a due date with an author, is that it's not just a sort of whenever you can get it in, that all of this other stuff is based on that date, and then your pub date, and everything in the middle is based on that. And if it starts to shift too much, then this is why your pub date is going to shift. It's just that you're not the only one there.
Right. You're not. And if you miss your slot at the printer, you know, sometimes that can't be made up as quickly as you would like for it to be made up because their press time is booked. So yeah, I can at least explain that end of things now with that background.
Did you manage copy editors too?
No, we had a managing editor. So I would work with the managing editor to come up with dates, you know, but she was all about the dates. But she was the one hiring the copy editors and the proofreaders.
Yeah, and that's something I think maybe authors don't always realize, is that most or all copy editing is freelance at publishing houses. And
our interior designs were all freelance. Proofreading and copy editing was all freelance.
A lot of
composition,
actual cover artists too.
Yeah, actual physical setting of the interior book was all freelance, which was how I supplemented my income as a broke young publishing professional living in New York City. I did a lot of freelance book composition.
I did a lot of freelance page proofreading.
Oh yes, I did some proofreading too, but I was not quite as interested. There was something very
I hated it.
There was something great about book composition, because once you have all your style sheets set up, you really kind of go on autopilot, and it's very I don't know, there's something calming about seeing your pages come together, and it was great. And I paid off my taxes one year with you know, freelance money. So
no, I started BookEnds on the back of proofreading. So there were a lot of books proofread to start this company. So I get it.
It just proves, like, you know, publishing is a much larger ecosystem than people realize, and that I even realized, you know, before I got into publishing.
I was going to say, I would say the advice you were given to just get in the door however you can is really solid advice. And I think, like you said, there are so many different job opportunities in publishing that you may discover something you didn't even know existed, but that is perfect for you.
Yeah. It's true. It's hard to get your foot in the door, so any way in, just elbow your way in however you can.
And it's funny too, because I didn't have a fuller understanding like that of what production actually was too, but hearing you say it, it's not so different than what agents do. Like all of that shepherding and all of the like organization that's needed and keeping things on track to sort of meet dates and make a successful book. So it's not like the biggest leap that you went from production to being an agent.
No, you're just herding a different set of cats. You know, like it's just a different set of cats that you're trying to get into gear.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting, since we've been talking about dates, how much everything hinges on those dates that you establish, which all start with the due date in the contract. And that if they start to shift, then sales can't pitch the book because they don't know when it's coming out. And bookstores can't be ready for it, and marketing and publicity and everything.
Everything. It becomes a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
And even just deliverables, getting things where they need to be. And, thinking about, like I said, it's such a big ecosystem, and then that doesn't even get into what's going on at the warehouses and what they're trying to do to fulfill these orders. Both paid orders and publicity copies and books to the author
and even printers and printer delays and stuff like that could happen.
Yeah. I had a book once that basically everything went wrong the entire way through, and this was a huge 1,200 page fully illustrated book with a slipcover, just a nightmare. We didn't even have illustrations until we were in like second pass pages, I think. And somehow we made our printer date. I still don't know how, but somehow we did it. And they were going to deliver on time, and then the binding line broke down. Bindery. So, there are all these things that you can't even account for ahead of time, but make your dates, deliver on time. It really does make a difference.
And authors don't necessarily know all of this stuff is going on behind the scenes on their behalf. So for them, what feels like an arbitrary date is actually part of a very well-oiled machine that needs you to deliver on that date.
Yes, absolutely. A well-oiled machine that can fall apart at the slightest.
Yes.
Well, now you're an agent. Your paper orders are behind you. But what was that transition like, going from working in production and having sort of this very expected machine to where agenting is a little more free, I guess you can say?
Yeah, I had a long transition because I left publishing altogether to go to grad school, because I just couldn't figure out how to stay in New York on a publishing salary and go to grad school, and I just couldn't make all of those columns line up. So I left and went to grad school, and then got married, had kids. Was looking, before my kids were in school, was looking for something I could do a few hours a week. So I started interning, to have something, that I could do. And my heart was still in publishing. And so I had a sort of gradual reentry program, I think, slowly built up to the point where, then I started taking on my own clients. But I think all of that experience, it obviously helped, to have all of that base of knowledge. I wasn't coming in, as a complete newbie to publishing and its processes and how things worked. And so obviously I think that gave me an advantage coming in.
Was there anything that surprised you on being on this sort of front end as opposed to being on the back end of production? Did you learn something that was particularly shocking?
I can't think of anything particularly shocking. No.
I mean, you really went from behind the scenes where, it's sort of the nobody knows your name. You're like the secret backbone of
random name and some acknowledgements and on some copyright pages here and there.
Right, to really sort of the first line.
Yeah. It's, because you're dealing with such opposite ends of the process. When I worked in production, I really had no idea what agents did. I had very little contact with authors. Very occasionally one would be in the office and would want to meet, in production, or you'd go to a book reading and meet them, somebody that you worked on their book. But other than that, I had no contact really with authors. And so this end of the process then was a complete mystery, to me.
It is funny how separate this industry
It's very compartmentalized.
Yeah. And yet we all depend on each other so much,
Yeah,
but some of us are so, like segregated in our areas.
No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, and agents and editors are sort of like the high praised ones, but you did so much for every book that you worked on.
Yeah. It's, my kids still get a kick. I can pull out a book and show them my name, on the copyright page or something.
I still get a kick out of pulling out a book and seeing my name in it. So I don't know that ever changes.
I don't think it goes away. My last really big book that I worked on was Michael Lewis's The Blind Side. Mm-hmm. And I got my name in the acknowledgements, and that still is one of my that Michael Lewis acknowledged my existence and work on his book is still kind of a high water mark.
Acknowledgements are still to this day a big deal for me and can bring me to tears. And I've had a few authors who have dedicated books to me, and I remember the first time I saw that, and that was really just, you really can just say it was completely overwhelming.
I can imagine.
It's pretty cool. I don't think authors realize that they just are listing the people who they want to thank, and they don't realize what a big deal that is to us.
It does mean a lot, yeah.
And it really does mean a lot. I'll notice some authors will make a point of acknowledging their cover artist and their copy editors and things like that. And it really does make a difference, because there are a lot of people who touch those books.
And put a lot into them.
I think too that, I would say the vast majority of us got into this business because we love books, right? We're readers. And, still to this day, even though I work with authors and I sell their books, if I have an interaction with, an author who's not mine on Twitter or something, I still get that there's that, you're still a fan, right? You're still this person who books are kind of this magical thing. And so I think when you're acknowledged as part of the process, it can still be kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely. No, for sure.
So you are one of the biggest history buffs I've ever met. And I think that really comes out in your list, both fiction and nonfiction. But how did you sort of fall in love with history? Is that what you went to grad school for?
I sort of. I got my graduate degree in something that nobody's ever heard of, which is history of the decorative arts, which is like art history, but instead of studying paintings and sculptures, you study furniture and textiles, ceramics,
cool.
Things that people use every day, material culture. So I thought a lot about trying to figure out where that history buff part of me came from, and I honestly cannot pinpoint it because it's just always been a part of my life. I was the kid who I can distinctly remember being 7 or 8. My grandparents had this huge coffee table book about the Civil War with all of Matthew Brady's photos, all these kind of gruesome battlefield photos. And I would sit for hours looking at this book. And, I asked for one for Christmas, and another Christmas I asked for a book about the Titanic. So I don't know where it started or why, but it's just always been a huge part of me to try to understand what it was like then, what were people like, what were they doing, how are they living? So it's obviously a huge part of my list. Historical fiction, anything nonfiction related having to do with history, I'm all in. You can never send me too many history related queries. I will read all of them, please.
When you were working, not to go backwards really, but when you were working in production, did you have an opportunity to really spend time with the books, or were you just working on sort of the numbers end of it?
Not before they were published. I read a lot of them after they were done. I never read one sort of in process, but afterwards. And you would definitely, I obviously don't know how it works in other production departments, but we would sit, when the new list came in, so we're planning for, fall, whatever, and we had the list of books. We would sit down as a department, there were 4 of us, and we would divide up what we were going to work on. So we got to pick and choose which books we wanted to work on. So I was picking all the history books and, you know, all the mysteries. But it was great because then you got to work on books that that you were really interested in reading eventually. But I think all of that played into getting them thinking about how they should be designed.
Sure. Sure. Well, it's interesting too. This might be backtracking a little, but I think one thing many people don't realize is when you do get a job in publishing, however it is you get your foot in the door, if you are working with a publishing company, you might not always end up at a place that is what you expected or what you read, and so sometimes your job will shape your reading as much as you know, it's like you could end up somewhere working on books, especially in a production end, that you never would have picked up as a reader.
Right. And, you know, where our offices were located, we also had an independent bookstore right around the corner. So at lunch and stuff, that's where we were. And after work, that's where we were. And it's just, you know, your entire life is sort of revolving around these books all the time. And nothing, you know, obviously nothing's changed much.
True. That's true. Yeah, we did the same too. Spent my lunches at the bookstore.
Yep. And a lot of money.
We talked about this at the top of the video, and I'm getting a little hungry, so I'm going to bring it back up again.
Always hungry.
Always hungry. I had chocolate before we started, so.
Always have chocolate.
But you love to cook. We send recipes and YouTube videos and the whole 9 yards back and forth.
Why am I not in on this exchange?
I don't know. I think we should start a BookEnds foodie Slack channel.
We do need one.
Yeah, we have a recipe channel.
We should. Jessica has an Airtable totally dedicated to her recipes, and she shared it with me, and I just steal recipes.
I do. It's so I can categorize, like, when I cook something, where I got it. Like, is it a cookbook? Is it online? And it's also a great resource for when I don't know what to cook. I can go to my Airtable and it's my suggestions.
Yeah.
I'm a meal planner, so I plan for the week.
Oh no, I can't do that. What if I'm not in the mood for it?
It was a production.
It does happen sometimes. Sometimes things shift around because what I'm supposed to make on Tuesday, I'm not in the mood for. But I have learned we waste less food in our house this way because everything is sort of accounted for, and I make a list, and my husband gets annoyed because if I have a list and I go to the grocery store, I only get what's on the list.
I know.
He's like, let's grab some cookies. Let's go, you know, spend an hour in the beer section. But I'm very focused on my list, and we do end up then not throwing a lot of food away. And
no, I'm a cooking pantser.
Yeah, I can't. I get plus I don't want to think about it. Like, you know, you shut off work at 5:30, and then I don't want to have to be like, oh, okay, now what am I cooking for dinner? I just go, I look at my menu, I'm making that. And there are some times where I'm like, I am not eating that. I don't want that. You know, so I move things around. But
yeah, I get that. No. So do you follow recipes exactly then?
No.
Okay. Me either.
So we talked about it earlier. Amanda sent me a recipe for palak paneer, and she was basically saying, okay, I tried my best, but a lot of this is just like a pinch of that, a pinch of this.
Yeah.
So you have to really just eyeball it. And so I don't think she follows anything by the recipe.
Well, I also will be cooking something and I'll be like, oh, I have this in the fridge. I'll just toss it in. Yeah. But I have a friend who is a baker. And so she's very and she would be like, this is great. Can I have the recipe? And I'd be like, okay, and she would get so mad at me because I'd be like, but I didn't use that, and I did that instead, and I didn't use that. And she was just like, I give up.
I'm definitely a substituter. And, you know, most of the things that I know how to cook just off the fly are Indian, which is not something that I ever would have, you know, growing up in Kentucky, never would have thought that would have been what I knew how to cook the most of. And, you know, I've joked about this, but my mother-in-law, you know, obviously never looked at a recipe or a cookbook in her life. And, when she was teaching us, my sister-in-law and me, how to make certain things, you had to be careful not to turn your back, because if you turned your back, she'd throw something in, and you turn around mid-throw and be like, well, no, what was that? What was that? What are you doing? And if we asked her how long to cook something, her response was always, until it looks good.
That's how I cook.
Yeah, which was always super frustrating when you're learning. But now the problem is people ask me how to make things, and it really is the best description until it.
I think actually in the recipe you sent me, you said until it looks
I wouldn't be surprised. I was telling somebody how to make chickpeas the other day, and I was like, just cook it until it looks, good.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think Indian is super easy to sort of make your own. Yeah. Once you get the spices and stuff, for me, I find that I can take a recipe and I'll be like, oh, I can redo this however I want.
And it's so there, even things like garam masala, which we think of as a spice, is not. It's people make their own. Mm-hmm. And so they make it the way that they like it, with a little less of this and a little more of that. And so it's different. Food can be very different from house to house, certainly from region to region. So it's very personal, I feel like. And that's, I think, probably too what I said in James's recipe is like, if you like it spicy, do this. And if you don't, do that. And add a little more of this and taste it at the end. It really does lend itself to being able to personalize it the way you like it.
And those are my favorite cookbooks that have this section that's like, if you don't have this, add this. If you're allergic or don't like this, try this. And it makes you more invested in the process too. Like, oh, I want to make this the way I want to eat it.
The only thing lately that has been a problem is my husband has been tracking his food. So he uses an app. And so it's impossible. If it's a recipe, I do cook by recipe sometimes, but then we have to sit down and I have to tell him where all I modified everything, because it's that's
annoying.
That's too much butter. I'm not putting that much butter in, or that, it's a chore and I don't want to do it, but
yeah, that's too much for me. Yeah. I don't even like to tell you when I'm done, and if everybody's like, I really like this, can we make this again? I'm like, I can try.
Theoretically, we can get close.
Yeah. The joke at my house is nobody's ever had the same dish twice, even if it's the same dish.
That's definitely fair.
Yeah.
So it's amazing too, like when you get so into cooking and when you do it so much, as I buy the same salt, but we have determined that this time the salt must be like a slightly different grain.
Yeah.
So everything I've cooked over the last couple of weeks has been off, either too much or too less.
Right.
So I definitely can see where I fall into like my habits and these little things completely off track.
So your dad has the most amazing cookbook collection.
I forgot to tell you, he said he could find a place to put a bed like on the island.
Good. Because I'm moving into his kitchen. It's incredible. But do you have a favorite cookbook?
Favorite cookbook?
Because you were raised apparently in Cookbook Landia.
I bought hundreds of cookbooks. My favorite are probably the Smitten Kitchen cookbooks.
Oh,
I love her.
I love her.
And I went to college with her apparently, but I didn't know at the time. I really like hers.
And they're so easy. Her recipes are so easy, and also just they're great if you're having company or something, because they're simple, but everybody will like them. Like it's a...
I'm actually making one of hers tonight for dinner, which is this. Basically, it's the easiest roast chicken. You roast it on top of a bed of chopped cabbage. So all the butter and chicken fat runs down and cooks the cabbage too. And it's the easiest, most delicious thing you've ever had.
Yeah, she's great.
I love it.
Well, it's safe to say, in addition to history books, you're open to food books.
Anything about food. But especially, food is so central to our lives. And so anything about food, but also about how food intersects with race, gender, culture, economics, anything like that. Definitely very interested.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated right now, as I know you are too, with the impact of the pandemic on the food industry. And it's not just restaurants. It's, everyone from the distributors to the farmers and everything in between. And even communities, like you said, food is everything, and it has such an impact. Well, James and I don't do a video without discussing food.
No, always.
But food is so much. It's not, it's so much of what our communities are based around. I mean, restaurants are so much of the central of like a community's economics.
Yeah, and more than that too, the entire food, ecosystem is disrupted, and people are facing food insecurity at record rates. And like, the pandemic is definitely affecting the entire food industry, from restaurants to distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And also maybe, bringing to light these inequalities and structural problems that were already there. Much of this already existed in the food production system, and obviously just exacerbated it to a point that no one, maybe could have foreseen. But many of these problems already existed. Just now been taken to, the nth degree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, not to end. Yeah, I was gonna say, not to end on a somber note.
What's everybody cooking tonight?
Chicken and cabbage.
What are you cooking tonight, James?
I am making chicken and curry rice pilaf.
Curry powder. There would be a whole discussion in this house about curry powder. So.
Okay. Well then, no, not curry powder.
Well, that's when people say I don't like curry. I'm like, but curry is just a mixture of spices. It's not actually a thing.
And it's not allowed in our house.
Really? Oh, you mean like the pre-made curry is not allowed?
Yeah, I sneak it in every once in a while, and I get this, is there curry powder in
I love curry. Well, I have no plan for dinner yet.
I can't see, that would stress me out.
No, it's too early.
I'm always starved, so to be like 5 o'clock and now I have to think and like figure it out, it would stress me out.
And then you're hangry, and so you want everything but nothing. I can't.
And then suddenly it's 7 o'clock and you didn't eat dinner and you had like 4 bags of like chips or something.
No, I never don't eat dinner. I may have had 4 bags of chips, but I'll still have dinner.
The other night I definitely ate 4 pizza crusts that my children refused to eat, and that was my dinner, sadly.
Yeah, I've definitely had plenty of dinners that were literally a bowl of popcorn and a glass of wine.
Cereal. I do enjoy the cereal for dinner occasionally.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've made everybody hungry, if you have any production, history, or food questions for Amanda, don't hesitate to put them in the comments. We'll make sure we get you an answer. And if you're writing anything in the history or food genres, or
history of food,
intersectional, or if anything else, piques Amanda's interest as per her submission guidelines, definitely send her a query. But we thank you for watching, and we hope to see you back next time.
Bye.